The level of effort that went into making our VFX creatures come to life was unbelievable. Their skeleton, their musculature, their skin texture, their color, where the fossils were found, all of this stuff. And then, of course, there's the movement of them, which was another thing that was absolutely key to getting right.
So for life on our planet, we ended up making more than 50 creatures.
The pronunciations.
No, I can do all of them. Jobanopsid, Populopulus.
It's like a different language. It's like learning Latin.
There's only one person that knows all the names, that's Tom.
100%. Probably can do them all backwards.
Gorgonopsid, Myosaura, Anthracosaurus, Anomalocaris, that's a good one. To make these models, we have to start by doing a lot of research, and we make these fact files that we then pass on to Industrial Light and Magic so they can start working on how the animal looks at its first pass. There's lots of literature out there. We have to talk to scientists, but when Industrial Light and Magic get hold of it, their artists really take it on to a new level.
What excited me about life on our planet was the fact that we're going to get to work with scientists and factual information rather than concepts. So I was actually excited about building our assets in a slightly different way.
I think there's good evidence for the fossils of terror birds and what they looked like in terms of form and shape.
So as a modeller, the main thing is to play around with shapes and forms. But they all begin with a simple ball fitting to a skeleton, literally just pulling and dragging into shape and carving in, so kind of like what you do with physical sculpting.
We talked to a scientist, Dino, who knew everything about terror birds. So the anatomy of the thing, the feathers, they were absolutely on point, and we had a really, really accurate model. When it came into our hands and we were starting to decide the colour, that's when things went a little bit wrong.
We were given some artwork to match to initially, but when we put it in the environment, it just didn't look at all scary. The producers sort of said to us, well, I don't think it just looks a bit like a sort of giant chicken. It had this big yellow beak and a bit of red on it. And we were like, no, it doesn't look very scary, does it? It looks like foghorn leghorn, not something that, you know, a Smilodon's going to be afraid of.
Interpreting colour in dinosaurs is really tricky because for the vast majority, we don't have evidence for colour.
In the end, we said to ILM, look, this isn't working. Its goal is to live up to its name and be terrifying.
And so we were like, yeah, I think we can do that.
They read the fact file, interpreted it their way, and 2 days later delivered this dark grey, black, really frightening terror bird, and that is absolutely the one we went with.
In terms of complexity, Mammoth and Cave Lions was probably easily the most complicated.
In the case of the fur or feathers, it all starts with something we call guide grooming. You're feeling like a hairdresser. You've got tools that you could cut the hair, extend it, add frizz, add bend, to get the flow of the fur down the creature right first. It's a very interactive process nowadays, grooming. So the mammoth was lots of layers, lots of different lengths. Obviously the environment factors such as snow and mud had to clump in the fur as well.
One of the quite difficult aspects we found with the woolly mammoth and working with the snow interaction on its fur. So we had to work out different ways of trial and error, passing it back and forth to kind of scatter some snow there. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, let's scatter over here. Okay, that works, and just keep going back and forth.
Anything where it involves millions of somethings is a real challenge.
It works quite well, especially when you see it around the bottom of its foot and stuff. It really helps sell it that it's been walking through this environment and it's picked up all this snow just as it slowly walked through all of it.
We managed to get there in the end.
When the first fully rendered version of the mammoths came through, I was blown away. They look amazing. All that blowing snow was created by ILM, and the hair and the mammoths, that scene looks wicked.
Underwater, I have to put my hand up and say I thought it'd be easy. I was like, how hard can it be? It's just blue stuff with some, shards of light. I mean, we've all seen pictures of underwater. You think, it's easy. Actually, turns out water is really, really difficult to do. because we're also making the ocean in those shots most of the time. So it's a combination of the entire environment is CG. You know it's wrong quite quickly if it's wrong. So we spent a huge amount of time on things like Dunkleosteus, getting that right. I mean, months, actually.
It's quite a large asset underwater, which inevitably means it's quite flatly lit. And so we had to really put a lot of scarring detail in as we were sculpting it, which I really enjoyed doing. So we were referencing like whales and sharks, large marine life, to really cross-reference scarring and aging on the donkey. So that really helped, as well as like the savage teeth. It felt quite natural before it even got to like animation and rigging stages. So yeah, he was a really rewarding asset to work on.
Sean loves dinos, but for me, I just like surfaces. Because it's a sea creature, so it's really far down. A lot of them actually tend to be like super crazy colors. So they was like, let's just make it more exciting with the palette. So we made it like bright red pink. And it was just so fun to just make over this creature. It was just really cool just because the surface is just so interesting to recreate. That was a nice bit of skin to work on.
Underwater is definitely much harder than you think. So if anyone out there is thinking of doing a big underwater scene in computer graphics, don't. Or at least give it more time than you think you need.
Some VFX creatures came to life almost by themselves because you know so much about what they're supposed to look like. But others, there were often room for interpretation, and those usually took a lot longer.
I never realised that you had such massive beasts way, way before the dinosaurs.
And it was weirder, and no one knows about it.
The Gorgonopsid was fascinating because we're sort of in the middle between reptile to mammal evolution. It's got hair, it's got a skin that's not quite lizard, not quite mammal.
What in the world looks like that? It's got skin, but it's got stripes. And it was just really weird to try and understand like how the edge of that pattern would bleed on the skin. There's stuff like that that was hard to find reference for.
Yeah. They look like a badass creature. Teeth are out, they look mean. And then I have the conversation with Tom, and he's like, yeah.
It's been traditional to expose the teeth of dinosaurs and other extinct animals because often those are the most impressive things. But the evidence does suggest that most animals that have even really, really large canine teeth, for example, they're covered by some kind of lip.
It's always vital when you're working with models to be posing them and move them to different positions to think about how they would walk and how they would move. Once we put a walk cycle in there or a flight cycle, so many other talking points would come up.
And the walk is not quite like a lizard or like a mammal. Its spine is sort of in between. So addressing that, talking to people who specialize in biomechanics and walking and that kind of thing, and getting that sense of it being wolf-like, but also a reptile, was really tricky.
When I started seeing it moving a few weeks later, I was like, oh wow, I had no idea that's how it would move in my mind. But it was just fantastic seeing them sort of come to life in that respect.
So we've used lots of strings of evidence to build this creature, and it looks like the perfect hybrid between a reptile and a mammal, this crucial stage of evolution. And I'd say it's probably one of the most accurate models of this animal ever.